A poor young boy selflessly pays for an elderly couple's meal, despite his own struggles. Mocked by a wealthy restaurant manager, his kindness goes unnoticed until the next day, when a millionaire shows up at his door with an unexpected reward. This powerful story proves that even the smallest acts of kindness can change lives in ways we never imagine. A young boy, barely making ends meet, does something no one expects. He spends his last few dollars on a meal for two strangers. In a world where kindness is often overlooked, his selfless act goes unnoticed by most. But fate has a different plan. What happens next will leave you speechless. What if a single act of kindness could change your life forever? That's exactly what happened to this boy, and you won't believe who showed up at his door the next day. His story is proof that even the smallest gestures can create waves of change. Before we dive in, tell us, what's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Drop a comment below and subscribe for more gripping stories like this. This isn't just a feel-good story. It's about fate, kindness, and how one small action can ripple across lives in ways we never expect. Jason, a 12-year-old black boy, had learned to survive in a world that often seemed indifferent to his struggles. Living in a rundown neighborhood with his overworked mother and younger sister, he had no time for childhood luxuries. His father had been absent for as long as he could remember, and his mother juggled multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. To help, Jason did whatever odd jobs he could find, washing cars, selling newspapers, and running errands for neighbors, earning just enough to contribute to their daily survival. Despite his hardships, he remained kind and selfless, always looking for ways to help his sick mother and bring a little joy to his sister's life. That evening, Jason found himself standing outside a bustling downtown cafe, watching through the large glass windows as well-dressed customers enjoyed steaming plates of food and laughter-filled conversations. The golden hue of the setting sun cast a warm glow over the city, and the soft murmur of conversations mixed with the clinking of cutlery created a world so different from Jason's own. He could only dream of sitting at one of those tables, of eating a meal without worrying about the cost. But dreams, he reminded himself, were for people who had choices. As he lingered near the entrance, his sharp eyes caught sight of an elderly couple seated near the window. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, both in their 70s, had a quiet, dignified presence. But Jason noticed the way Mr. Thompson subtly checked his pockets, his expression tightening. Mrs. Thompson's gentle smile wavered as she glanced toward their waiter, hesitating to call him over. Jason's stomach twisted. He had seen this look before. They were short on money, and now they were stuck, unsure of how to pay for their meal. The realization sent a wave of emotions through him. He barely had enough for himself, but in that moment, he knew what he had to do. Without thinking twice, Jason stepped inside, gripping the few crumpled bills he had earned that day. As he approached their table, a sharp voice cut through the air. Mr. Collins, the restaurant manager, stood a few feet away, his arms crossed as he watched Jason with an unimpressed sneer. Dressed in a crisp white shirt, he radiated an air of authority, one that didn't take kindly to an uninvited street kid walking into his establishment. Other patrons began to take notice, their whispers a mixture of amusement and curiosity. Jason ignored the murmurs, his heart pounding as he reached the elderly couple. He had no idea that this one decision, this single act of kindness, would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Jason took a deep breath and stepped forward, gripping the few crumpled bills in his hand. His heart pounded, but his feet remained steady as he approached the waiter standing near the elderly couple's table. Without hesitation, he held out the money. "I'd like to pay for their meal," he said firmly. The words felt strange coming from his mouth, as if he had stepped into a role much bigger than himself. Mrs. Thompson gasped, her frail hands clasping together in surprise. Mr. Thompson, though visibly touched, gently shook his head. "Son, we can't let you do this," he said, his voice kind but firm. Jason could see the humility in the old man's eyes, the struggle between pride and gratitude. But he had already made up his mind. "My mom says kindness always finds its way back," Jason said, a small yet determined smile on his face. "Please, let me." A sharp laugh cut through the moment like a knife. Mr. Collins, the restaurant manager, took a step forward, arms crossed over his chest, his expression twisted with amusement. "You?" he scoffed, eyes flicking toward Jason's worn-out clothes. "Pay for them? With what? Your pocket change?" His voice was loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. Conversations faded as more people turned to watch. Jason clenched his fists, his face burning with embarrassment, but he stood his ground. "It's my money," he said, his voice steady despite the lump forming in his throat. "I worked for it." Mr. Collins smirked, shaking his head in disbelief. "Oh, I see what this is," he said mockingly. "A little stunt to get attention. Or did you steal this money?" His gaze hardened, his tone dripping with accusation. "Because there's no way a street kid like you can afford to pay for someone else's meal." A murmur spread through the restaurant. Some customers exchanged awkward glances, uncertain of what to believe. Others looked on with sympathy, while a few nodded in agreement with the manager, their eyes filled with doubt. The weight of their judgment pressed down on Jason, but he refused to back down. "I didn't steal anything," Jason said, his voice rising. "I worked hard for this money. I sell newspapers. I wash cars. I run errands. Every single dollar. I earned." He looked at the waiter, pleading silently for him to just take the money and end this humiliation. But the young man hesitated, glancing between Jason and Mr. Collins, unsure of what to do. Mrs. Thompson, tears welling in her eyes, reached out and placed a gentle hand on Jason's arm. "This young man has more heart than anyone in this place," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And he's showing kindness in a way that many people wouldn't." Mr. Thompson nodded firmly. "The boy is telling the truth," he added, his gaze locked onto Mr. Collins. "I won't let you treat him like a thief." But the manager wasn't moved. He let out a low chuckle and turned to the crowd. "See this? This is what happens when you let street kids think they belong in places like this." He sneered as he looked back at Jason. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself any further." Jason swallowed hard, his hands shaking at his sides. He wanted to yell, to argue, to prove that he wasn't a liar, but the shame burned too deep. His gaze dropped to the floor, his confidence wavering. The restaurant suddenly felt suffocating, the weight of the stairs crushing him. Before he could take a step back, Mrs. Thompson suddenly stood up, fury flashing in her aged but sharp eyes. Mr. Thompson followed, his expression dark with disappointment. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath as the elderly couple confronted the arrogant manager. What happened next would change everything. Mr. Thompson's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed himself up, his frail hands trembling, not with weakness, but with anger. His usually gentle voice rose, firm and unwavering. This young man just showed more kindness than anyone in this room, he declared, his eyes blazing as he looked at Mr. Collins. And you dare shame him? The cafe, once filled with idle chatter and laughter, fell into a stunned silence. All eyes were on the old man and the boy beside him. Jason fought back the lump in his throat, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His chest tightened, not just from humiliation, but from the weight of the moment. He had done something good, something selfless. Yet here he was being treated as if he had committed a crime. But despite the burning sting of embarrassment, he stood his ground. He would not let this man take away the one thing he still held on to: his dignity. Mr. Collins let out a short, unimpressed laugh, shaking his head as if he found the entire situation ridiculous. He folded his arms and leaned slightly forward. "Kindness doesn't pay the bills, old man," he said coldly, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This is a business, not a charity." Jason's gaze snapped up, and before he could stop himself, the words poured out, steady and full of conviction. "Maybe not," he said, his voice unwavering, "but it makes the world better. And that's more than money can buy." His heart pounded, his body tense, but he refused to look away. For the first time he saw something flicker in Mr. Collins' expression. Was it hesitation? No, it was brief, gone in an instant, replaced by the same cold indifference. The waiter, who had been watching the exchange with visible discomfort, suddenly straightened. With a deep breath he turned to Jason, reached for the crumpled bills in his hand, and nodded. "Your money is just as good as anyone else's," he said firmly. He glanced at Mr. Collins as if daring him to argue. "The meal is paid for," Mrs. Thompson gasped, covering her mouth, while Mr. Thompson placed a hand on Jason's shoulder, squeezing it gently. "Thank you, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to do this, but you did, and that means more than you'll ever know." A ripple of movement passed through the cafe as some customers exchanged looks of discomfort, realizing how quickly they had judged the boy. A few began to clap, the sound hesitant at first, then growing louder as more joined in. Others shifted, in their seats, ashamed of how they had remained silent. Mr. Collins' face darkened, his jaw tightening as he looked at the boy. He didn't say another word, but his glare spoke volumes. This wasn't over. Jason met his gaze, refusing to back down, refusing to shrink away. Mrs. Thompson wiped at her eyes before stepping forward and wrapping her arms around Jason in a warm, grandmotherly embrace. "You have a good heart," she whispered. "Never let anyone make you feel small for that." Mr. Thompson followed, patting Jason's back with a proud smile. As they left the cafe, Jason let out a quiet breath. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this one simple act of kindness, had set something in motion that would change his life forever. The next morning, Jason was startled awake by the sound of loud knocking at the door. He rubbed his eyes, groggy from the restless night before, still replaying the events at the cafe in his mind. His mother, looking just as surprised, hurried to the door. When she pulled it open, her breath caught in her throat. Standing outside was a man dressed in a sharp, well-tailored suit, his shoes polished, his presence commanding yet warm. Jason sat up quickly, confusion flickering across his face as he stepped forward. The man smiled at him, his eyes kind yet filled with intent. "I heard about what you did yesterday," he said. His voice was smooth, but there was something deeper in it, something that told Jason this wasn't just an ordinary visitor. His mother, still holding the door open, looked between the man and Jason, uncertainty in her expression. Jason swallowed, feeling a strange mix of nerves and curiosity. Then came the revelation that left Jason speechless. "My name is William Thompson," the man said. "I'm the son of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, the couple you helped." Jason's eyes widened in shock. "They told me everything," William continued. "They told me about the young boy who gave away what little money he had just to make sure two strangers didn't go hungry. And when I heard your story, I knew I had to meet you." Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. His act of kindness had reached beyond the cafe, beyond that one moment. William Thompson wasn't just anybody. He was a highly successful businessman, the owner of multiple companies. Yet, at that moment, none of that seemed to matter. What mattered was the way he looked at Jason, not with pity, but with admiration. "I built my success because once upon a time, someone showed me kindness when I needed it most," William said. "And I believe in rewarding good-hearted people, like you." Then he made the offer that would change Jason's life forever. "I want to give you a full scholarship. You'll get the education you deserve. And your mother," he turned to her with a smile, "I want to offer her a stable job so she won't have to struggle anymore." Jason felt his heart pounding. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His mind raced, struggling to process what was happening. This wasn't why he had done what he did. He hadn't expected anything in return. Yet, here stood a man offering him a future he had never dared to dream of. His mother clutched her chest, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Jason's eyes stung as he looked at her, seeing the relief, the gratitude, the overwhelming joy written all over her face. Slowly, he turned back to William, swallowing hard before finally finding his voice. I just wanted to help them," he said, his words almost a whisper. "I didn't do it for this." William nodded, his expression softening. "That's exactly why you deserve it," he said simply. By now, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors stepping outside, watching in awe. Some whispered in disbelief, others smiled, witnessing a moment that none of them would forget. Jason, the boy who had given so much with so little, was now being given a chance at a new life. As his mother wiped away her tears and grasped Jason's hand tightly, Jason finally let himself believe it. His kindness had come full circle. And this, he realized, was just the beginning. Jason's life changed in ways he never imagined. With the full scholarship granted by William Thompson, he started school with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to make the most of the opportunity he had been given. Though the adjustment was overwhelming at first, he worked harder than ever, excelling in his studies and proving himself as a dedicated student. His story spread across the school, inspiring not only his classmates but also teachers and faculty who admired his resilience and humility. He carried the same kindness with him, helping struggling students, tutoring younger kids, and always remembering the lessons his mother had instilled in him. At home, life finally became easier. His mother, after years of working long hours at multiple exhausting jobs, could finally breathe. With a stable job offered by William, she no longer had to worry about whether there would be enough food on the table or how she would afford rent. She had a steady income, a safe work environment, and, most importantly, the ability to spend more time with Jason and his younger sister. The weight of years of struggle lifted from her shoulders, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled without worry. William took Jason under his wing, mentoring him and guiding him toward a bright future. He taught him not just about business and success, but about responsibility, integrity, and the importance of always staying true to oneself. Jason soaked in every lesson, determined to one day pay forward the kindness that had changed his life. Meanwhile, the impact of what had happened at the cafe had not faded. Word of Jason's mistreatment at the hands of Mr. Collins spread throughout the community, and soon people began to take notice. Many refused to dine at the restaurant, disgusted by the way Jason had been humiliated simply for showing kindness. As customers dwindled, the restaurant suffered, and the backlash only grew stronger. Eventually, unable to ignore the damage any longer, the owners were forced to take action. Mr. Collins, the once arrogant manager who had belittled Jason, lost his position. He was forced to reckon with the consequences of his arrogance, realizing too late that cruelty and prejudice would always come at a cost. In an ironic twist, the restaurant later sought to repair its tarnished reputation and made an offer to Jason's mother. With her years of experience and strong work ethic, they asked her to return, not as an overworked, underappreciated employee, but as a respected staff member. She accepted, not out of desperation, but with dignity, knowing she had earned the position through her own hard work. Now she worked in a place where she was valued, where people respected her efforts, and where no one would ever look down on her or her son again. Years passed, and Jason grew into the man he had once dreamed of becoming. With education, mentorship, and perseverance, he built a successful life, not just for himself, but for those around him. But he never forgot where he came from. One day, as he walked down the street, he spotted a young boy, worn and weary, much like he had once been. The boy hesitated outside a small diner, watching the customers inside with longing, much like Jason had done all those years ago. Jason approached him, a knowing smile on his face. He knelt down and handed the boy enough money for a warm meal. The boy's eyes widened in shock. "Why?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jason's smile deepened as he gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because kindness always finds its way back," he said, and with that he walked away, knowing that he had just set another ripple of change in motion. This story proves that even the smallest act of kindness can change lives in ways we never expect. Jason had no idea that offering his last few dollars to help an elderly couple would set off a chain of events that would transform his future. His selflessness, met first with doubt and ridicule, eventually led to opportunities beyond his imagination. But what if he had chosen to walk away instead? What if he had let fear or judgment stop him from doing what he knew was right? It makes you wonder, have you ever helped someone in need? Would you do it even if no one was watching? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced kindness coming full circle in your own life? Drop your story in the comments, and let's inspire each other. And if you believe in the power of kindness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, uplifting stories like this one. Remember, kindness is never wasted. It always comes back when you least expect it.